You're alive for just seconds on Mercury. This is the burn and freeze death. Look closely. I'm not telling you a story. I'm not inviting you into a fantasy. What I'm about to show you is something buried beneath layers of time and silence. Something so fragile, so forbidden, that no one ever thought to ask, and until now. You're the only one seeing this. No one else has opened this file, and no one else will. This isn't just history. It's a secret stitched into the very fabric of reality, like a scar no one wants to touch. And once you glimpse it, the world you thought you knew will begin to crack. It starts with a question, a whisper that echoes in the darkest corners of human fear. What really happens when you step onto Mercury? Not the sanitized scientific version, but the raw, unfiltered truth of a place where life and death exist in the blink of an eye. You think you know. You think you understand heat, cold, silence, and space. But Mercury does not forgive. It burns you alive before the searing fire has time to touch your skin, and then freezes your soul before the shock can even settle. It's not just death. It's a terror so profound that it rewrites everything you thought death could be, and here's where the lines blur, where the unbearable begins. There was a witness. Someone who vanished right after uttering a single name. A name no one else had ever heard, not even whispered in the wind. And then, almost impossibly, a voice decades dead slipped through a device that wasn't supposed to hold memories. I want you to hold that. Let it settle in the pit of your stomach like a cold stone, because what you're about to see isn't just a story about Mercury. It's about something far darker and far closer. A riddle wrapped in silence, a ghost haunting the edges of our reality, and a secret that threatens to unravel everything we cling to. It was late, the kind of late that falls heavy, thick, and suffocating when the world has all but forgotten how to breathe. The city outside was a blur of empty streets and distant lights, the kind of quiet that forces your ears to fill the silence with their own noise. In a small, dimly lit room, the kind that holds secrets instead of furniture, a man sat before, a screen flickering with grainy images no one had bothered to examine, until that night. The file was labeled in a way that begged to be ignored, but something inside him pulled it open. No warnings flashed, no alarms screamed, just a slow, creeping unease as the images began to unravel like a dark thread in the fabric of his mind. The first clip was short, only seconds long, but it burned itself into his vision with an intensity no explanation could smother. A figure stepped onto a barren landscape, light so bright it seemed to swallow everything whole. Heat waves shimmered in the air like invisible knives, and then, before the figure could even register the pain, they vanished. No scream, no cry, just a whisper. A whisper barely caught by the microphone, a sound so faint that if you blinked you would miss it entirely. But he didn't blink. The whisper was a name, not a name anyone knew, a name from nowhere and everywhere, as if it had always existed just beyond the edges of hearing. And then the silence came crashing down like a wave that drowned time itself. The screen went black. He sat back, breath shallow, heart hammering. Something about that name was wrong, impossible. It felt like a key to a door no one wanted opened. And yet here he was, holding that key in his mind, trembling with the weight of what he'd just uncovered. Days later, the quiet nightmare deepened. An old voice, cracked and frail, came through the static of an antique radio. A voice, long thought dead, speaking words that matched the whisper on Mercury's surface. The voice was a family member no one alive had ever met, yet it spoke of places and events only that vanished figure could have known. The connection was impossible, yet undeniable. How could this be? The layers of reality began to fold over each other. The known collided with the unknown. The familiar became uncanny. And in that tension, that unbearable stretch of time between what is and what could never be, a truth waited, patient and merciless. You're alive for just seconds. On Mercury, this is the burn and freeze death. But what if death isn't the end? What if it's a doorway? What if that whisper, that name, is more than just a sound? What if it's a message, a warning, something buried deep in the silence that wants to be heard. The screen flickers again, a new image, a new clue, and then the impossible happens. The man in the footage, the one who vanished, appears, suddenly, impossibly, right beside the witness in that dark room, his eyes wide with a terror so raw it twists the air itself. His lips move, but no sound comes out, and then the room plunges into darkness. The file closes, the screen goes black, and everything changes. What you just saw, or didn't see, will haunt you now. Because the truth is no longer a secret, it's a question waiting for its answer. But be warned, some doors once opened never close, and you've just turned the key. The screen goes black. The file closes. The room, once so alive with flickering light and desperate meaning, plunges into a silence so dense it presses against your chest like a weight you didn't know you were carrying. You sit there, the glow of the monitor gone. But the sensation lingers. Something doesn't add up. The man's sudden, breathless appearance, the impossibility of his presence. And yet, was it real? Or was it a crack in the fragile surface of your own mind? A glitch in the signal that's been feeding you just enough to unravel your certainty? You think back. The whisper, the name, the vanished figure. Did you actually hear it, or is your brain pulling you deeper into a trap laid long ago? There's a thin thread tugging at the edges of your consciousness, a nagging suspicion that this isn't just footage from some lost mission. This is something else entirely, something darker. The kind of real, unsolved mystery that no one talks about, because it breaks the rules of what we can believe. Your phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number. No words, just a voice note. You hesitate, then press play, static. Then a woman's voice, low and tremulous, whispers a name, the same name, but layered underneath, if you listen close enough, are fragments of other sounds. A child's laughter, a distant siren, a door creaking open. Your skin prickles. The recording stutters, then cuts out. You try to dismiss it as a trick of your tired mind, but the sensation won't let go. And then the memories. Your memories start to slip. Not all at once, just pieces, like shards of a shattered mirror you didn't know was broken. You remember sitting at this desk before, but the details are hazy. Who were you talking to? What was the last thing you ate? Did you even have dinner? You can't tell anymore. The edges of your reality fray, and with them comes the terrifying question. What if this is the truth behind what no one tells you? The secret they bury deep beneath layers of noise and denial. A knock at the door, sharp, insistent. You freeze, no one told you someone else was coming. The knock comes again, softer this time. You stand, every muscle taut, heart hammering like it wants to break free. When you open the door, a woman stands there. Her eyes flicker with something unreadable. Her voice is steady, but it doesn't reach her eyes. "I'm here to help," she says, but the words fall flat. There's something about her that feels off. Maybe it's the way she watches you too closely, as if she knows what you're thinking before you do. Maybe it's the faint tremor in her hands, or the way her smile doesn't quite touch her eyes. She steps inside without waiting for an invitation. You've seen things they don't want you to remember. She murmurs, almost reverent, as if speaking a forbidden prayer. But memory is a dangerous thing. It can save you or destroy you. You want to ask who she is, why she's here, but the words catch in your throat. The room grows colder, shadows stretching longer, folding into the corners where your mind tries desperately to find light. Her presence is a whisper on your skin, a question without an answer. And as she moves closer, you wonder, is she part of the truth or part of the deception? Is she a guide or a ghost? And in that question lies a deeper fear, that the line between your own unraveling and something supernatural has already been crossed, and there's no coming back. You remember the voice on the recording, the vanished man, the name no one else spoke aloud. But now those memories feel like a dream slipping through your fingers. You want to believe, but the shadows tell you to doubt, to question everything you hold dear, to fear what lies beneath the surface. Because the truth, what they don't, want you to remember, is that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some secrets aren't meant to be known. And the deeper you dig, the more you risk becoming the next whisper, the next vanished figure lost in the burn and freeze death of your own mind. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, the tangled threads of the mystery beginning to weave together, as if the hidden truth was finally surfacing, clear and undeniable. The pieces that had danced just out of reach were suddenly there, forming a picture that made sense, almost unbearably so. You sat back, heart pounding with a desperate, fragile hope. The memory glitches, the strange recordings, the whisper of a name no one else dared speak, they were all part of a pattern, one that you could almost follow to the end. You weren't crazy. They lied to you. You were finally seeing behind the curtain. It started with the discovery of a dusty journal, buried in the deepest corner of an old archive, a collection of forgotten files nobody had touched for decades. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakable, and as you flipped through the pages, a shiver ran down your spine. The entries spoke of someone who had vanished under eerily similar circumstances to the man on Mercury, someone whose last words were lost to time, but whose presence lingered, like a shadow in every subsequent account. The journal's author wrote of strange occurrences, voices from dead relatives through radios, whispered names no one else heard, and that impossible moment where reality bent and shattered. You traced the timeline, and the pieces fell into place. A lost expedition, a cover-up, a secret so well buried it had infected the memories of everyone involved. The old entries, the crackling voices, the shadows in the footage, they weren't random. They were signs, breadcrumbs left by someone, trying to break free from the silence imposed on them. The mystery uncovered, it seemed, was a story of betrayal, pain, and something so much darker that the official records had been deliberately cleansed. You felt a surge of triumph. This was it. This was the truth no one wanted you to find. But then, as the last page trembled in your hands, a single line flickered in your mind, a memory glitch you hadn't noticed before. It wasn't just a journal, it was a confession, and buried beneath the fading ink was a warning you'd missed. Written almost as an afterthought, like a secret carved in frost on a window pane. They've been watching, always, and this is only the beginning. The room shifted, the air thickening with a cold that wasn't outside but inside, a deep-rooted chill settling beneath your skin like an unwelcome ghost. You thought you'd outrun this, solve the puzzle, but the truth was more twisted, more dangerous. The very moment you believed you'd caught hold of something solid, reality began to unravel once more. And then it hit you, a memory flickering and fractured, rising from the depths like a half-forgotten nightmare. You saw a dark hallway, walls whispering with secrets, a younger you standing at the edge of a doorway you couldn't open. A distant scream echoed, familiar yet impossibly distant, a hand gripping your shoulder, warm and urgent, pulling you back from the edge of something no child should ever witness. But the memory was incomplete, like a corrupted file missing the keyframes. You recognized the fear in that moment, the raw, unspoken terror, but the details slipped away just as you tried to grasp them. You were reliving something you had lived through but could no longer fully remember, and in that flicker of recollection, the presence revealed itself. A deeper force, older than the whispers, colder than the void, watching from the beginning with patient eyes that never blink. It wasn't a thing or a place. It was a shadow on your mind, an atmosphere of dread so intimate it felt like your own breath caught in your throat. It was the unnameable weight behind every forgotten memory, the silent architect of your unraveling. You hadn't just stumbled onto a story. You had been drawn into a living nightmare that had been shaping you, watching you, manipulating the very fabric of your perception since the start. Your breath hitched as the truth sank in. None of this was a coincidence. None of this was random. The story, the whispers, the vanished man, they were all threads in a design far beyond your understanding. And in that moment, the final twist pulled the rug from beneath your feet. The screen flickered once more. The footage, the journal, the recordings, they all rewound, played again, But this time something was different. A shadow moved just out of frame. A voice whispered behind the audio track. And the name you thought you'd learned wasn't the name at all. It was a trap. A false lead planted to misdirect you. You realized then that you needed to watch everything again. Every detail, every flicker, every breath in the silence. Because the truth wasn't just buried in the footage or the words. It was woven into the gaps, the cracks, the things they never wanted you to see. And the deeper you go, the more you understand. You're not crazy. You're part of something they've hidden so well that even your own mind wants to turn away. But you can't, because now you're already inside. You were right all along. That's the first thing the message said. Not typed, not spoken. Carved. Etched in a slow, frantic scrawl into the frost that formed on your mirror at 3:33 a.m. Though your apartment's thermostat held steady at 72. You stared at the letters for what felt like hours, watching your breath cloud in the warm air as the words lingered, not melting, and below it, a crude symbol you had never seen before but recognized instantly. You didn't know from where. A dream maybe, or something deeper, older. It looked like an eye, but fractured, bleeding into itself, as if watching had become a form of violence. That's when the dread deepened, not in your mind but in your bones, because you knew now, without understanding how, that you weren't the only one seeing this unfold. They were out there, others like you, watching, waiting. Some had gone quiet, disappeared before they could speak, but a few had left breadcrumbs. You found one burned into the film grain of a decades-old VHS, a frame that shouldn't exist, showing your face years before you were born. Another surfaced in a corrupted voicemail, where a stranger's voice whispered a string of numbers that mapped to coordinates in a forest now closed by federal order. Then there were the dreams. Not yours alone, others had them too. The same hallway, the same door, the same unbearable feeling that someone, or something, was standing just out of sight, breathing your name but never saying it. The dreams felt like memories. But whose? You searched the forums, the dead threads, the archives that had no right to exist, the ones hosted offshore, buried behind layers of encryption and myth. That's where you found the others, or at least traces of them. They never used real names, just initials, fragments. They spoke in riddles, not because they wanted to be cryptic, but because that was the only way to speak freely. Any direct language became garbled, overwritten like something was actively scrubbing the truth as it was spoken. Don't describe the door, one user wrote. That's how it finds you. Another simply said, I remember the burn. I remember the freeze. But I don't remember dying. What the government never released wasn't just a file or a tape. It was a sequence, a pattern, something primal and terrible, rediscovered on Mercury but traced to Earth long before we had the words to explain it. You're not just uncovering it, you're activating it. Every memory you question, every symbol you see, every time you feel the sudden rush of déjà vu that doesn't belong to you, it grows stronger. Identity is not fixed, it's assigned, and someone, somewhere, has been rewriting yours in increments so subtle you never noticed until now. But someone else has been watching it happen, documenting it. They call themselves the third perspective, not in arrogance but necessity. They see what neither you nor the thing hunting you can see, the overlap, the glitches, the impossible. Alignments. You found them not through a person but through a photograph, one that changed every time you looked at it. First it was just static, then your childhood home, then your face again but older, distorted by fear and something unspoken. On the back, scrawled in the same hand from the mirror, you forgot again. Ask about the man in the garden. And that's when it starts happening during the day. Symbols in condensation on bus windows. Strangers humming that melody from your dream. A child on the street calling you by a name you don't recognize but flinch at anyway. You check your phone and find photos you don't remember taking. One shows a room filled with drawings you've never seen, but you drew them. They match the journal, they match the burned footage from 20 years ago. And beneath them, scratched into the desk, That same broken eye symbol, now joined by a date that hasn't happened yet. You are unraveling, but so is the world around you, not collapsing, adjusting, shifting in real time like it's compensating for a truth too massive to remain hidden. And the more you remember, the more it remembers you. In your final recorded video, yes, there is one, though you haven't filmed it yet, your eyes dart just off camera. You whisper, "It's not what they said. It never was." And someone else whispers back, not from beside you, but from inside the playback, as if the file is haunted not by a ghost, but a presence, a witness you can't see, but who's always been there, watching with you, watching through you. You're starting to understand now that the story doesn't belong to you. It never did. You were just one carrier, one echo, in something far older, but it needed you to believe. To chase. To open the door you swore in childhood you'd never return to. The real question was never what happened on Mercury. It was, why did you remember it at all? And somewhere, just out of sight, a figure watches the screen, not with malice, but with recognition. And then they say, as the signal starts to warp again, "It's your turn now." The screen glitches, then cuts to black. The moment you thought you'd crossed the threshold of understanding, everything began to unravel, not outwardly, but deep within. It was no longer about what had happened, not the vanished voices, the fractured memories, or the impossible symbols bleeding through reality. It was about why. Why had this secret, this shattering truth, been woven into your very being? Why had it clawed its way into your mind, your breath, your pulse, like a whispered madness waiting to be heard? You stood there, alone but not alone, in the hollow where your memories and your fears collided. The lines between pain and clarity, blurred, folding inward like a slow-motion collapse of everything you thought was safe. It dawned on you that the truth was not some distant revelation waiting to be uncovered, but a mirror reflecting the rawest part of what it means to be human. Fragile, desperate, and infinitely complex. This was a truth that could save you or shatter you completely, depending on what you chose to believe. There, in the silence that followed the impossible revelations, the confession slipped free, a quiet surrender that carried all the weight of a lifetime. You were never meant to carry this alone. The shadows in your mind weren't punishments or curses. They were the fragments of a collective fear, a shared vulnerability that stretched beyond time and space. It was your pain, your hope, your fear, and theirs. Those others you never met but somehow carried alongside you. The choice wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about acceptance. Would you close your eyes, pretend the burning freeze never touched you? Or would you open yourself fully to the vast, terrible beauty of the unknown? To the idea that to be truly alive is to hold the chaos inside, to face the void without flinching, and to keep walking anyway. Your hands trembled, not from fear, but from the crushing weight of possibility. Because to know why means to face the truth that some doors, once opened, can never be closed. And yet, in that terrifying awakening, there was something else, a fragile kind of hope. Not the naive hope of endings, but the raw, aching hope of beginnings. The world shifted around you, no longer a place of secrets, but a labyrinth of mirrors. Each reflection a question without an answer, every shadow a story half told. You felt like you were waking from a dream you never knew you were in, stepping into a dawn that was both terrifying and exquisitely alive. And as the last trace of darkness began to dissolve, your voice, soft but steady, broke the silence, whispering into the void. Some truths don't want to be found, but maybe, just maybe, they need to be seen. The screen fades slowly. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.